Hi, this is Phoebe Blamey and welcome to the Happy Money Journey podcast for today. I'm really excited to have you here. I have spent most of my life working in financial services. I'm a qualified financial planner and I have my own mortgage broking business since 2006. I know that as a busy woman, it's really hard to get your life into some sort of shape. And so I'm here to help you on your own happy money journey. Hey, and welcome to today. Thank you for joining us. I am so grateful you are with us today. We have Hannah. Hannah is our operations manager and an integral part of our Happy Money Journey team. But Hannah also owns and runs a cafe in Daylesford, which is in Western Central Victoria. She is an amazing woman. She's an amazing organizer and she's an amazing entrepreneur. I have watched her in business over the years and some of the incredible things that I've done. I love working with her. And she is sharing with us today the 5 things that make her the standout in business that she is. She's broken it down. She's got some great stories to tell. And I really hope you enjoy the podcast and the format that we've used. We're trying something a bit different. So really look forward to speaking to you, hearing your feedback. And here comes Hannah and her story. Let's go.
I began my cafe at the back of my mum's fashion boutique back when I was 22. I had no experience in hospitality. I didn't have a chef. My ex-partner had taught me how to make coffee for a month. I just gave it a real crack. I took months to plan the venture and actually did it as part of my degree. I did my whole final thesis year on hybrid retailing, and that was really a project that I pitched to my mum in the end. And I couldn't believe she actually said yes. So the idea of implementing a cafe was to bring people through the retail boutique to the cafe. It was to improve their experience in our venue by providing a space of belonging. It really was a third place where people felt comfortable. Often walking into a boutique can be quite intimidating, really. Are you there to spend money or are you just there to browse? And we found that, a lot of people wanted to look and feel inspired and touch and feel and try on clothes and things like that, but often didn't always have the funds. So what we did was, by implementing a cafe, was they could come in and browse and shop and look and try things on and just get a takeaway coffee. It meant that they got to come in, they got to see my mum and chat to her, they got to see me, they got to see other locals. It became a little bit of a hub. And really, it actually led to increased sales by introducing the cafe because people did feel warmer. They did feel more comfortable and they learnt to trust us in what we were encouraging them to purchase that would, help them with gifts, help them with an outfit for a wedding or, sometimes even a funeral. And it was that empathy and that connection that we really, really fostered. And by introducing the cafe, it really broadened our market.
I love that story because I think it's just one of those blue ocean strategy moments. So blue ocean strategy is looking for something that exists and making it different. It's basically how people came up with Uber or Airbnb, and this concept that was brought to Hawthorn 10 years ago of a cafe within a dress shop was just so divine because Kathy's was already a third place. It was already somewhere that you went to visit quite frequently. And so bringing in the cafe and having these moments there was just extraordinary. But the thing that I really take away from that part of what Hannah was just saying was they knew their audience. They understood their customer needs probably better than their customers understood them themselves. And reminds me of that, Henry Ford quote, if you asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. But he invented the Ford motor car, right? So that kind of thinking, that kind of getting away from it and thinking differently, which, Hannah had studied and she knew what she was doing, but really interesting to see that implemented and that know your clients so that you can then get to that next level is I think the biggest learning that I'm getting out of that. I don't know about you, but what is, if you were thinking about it from your own business perspective, what is the one thing that you would do to stay ahead of the game to anticipate your clients' needs?
I suppose being in Hawthorn, our fashion boutique was really targeting 45 plus year old women. Whereas when we introduced a cafe, we got men, we got young, we got older, we got all kinds of walks of life that wanted to come into the cafe. And eventually, you know, the guys would come up and be like, would my wife Sharon like this scarf? And we're like, we know Sharon, don't get the pink, get the blue. That kind of thing. It really actually broadened our market, not just for the cafe, but for the boutique as well. And it made shopping an easier, more pleasant experience. So when I introduced the cafe, as I said, I had no experience. And I laugh now at my first menu. It was very cute. It was pretty well avocado and ham on toast, maybe with a little bit of Meredith goat's cheese. And we bought in sweets. I didn't bake anything. We grew, and it was slow. I remember my first day where I cracked $150 of sales. And I was so happy. And then I remember my first week where each day was over $150. And I tell you what, I was celebrating. And like, to reflect back on that now, it was great. It was a great moment. We needed to get ahead of the game, but we couldn't afford a chef. The growth was really happening. We couldn't stay stagnant, and we advertised for a chef. Pammy came on board and quickly elevated our menu. This investment, yes, it put us under pressure financially for a few months because we weren't making enough money to cover it, but it really did elevate the business. And this risk paid off quickly. Our sales increased, our return customers increased. It all became actually easier, even though the menu was more complex. I learned so much from Pammy. This really shifted the direction of the business as I suddenly really saw the potential that the cafe could have. We learned so much and have since practiced stepping back from our business to look at the longer, the bigger term things and weighed up the risks and financial investments to reach the growth we wanted. Sometimes you just have to consider how to get ahead of the game and step back, take out the emotion and go for it. You've got to weigh up the risk.
It's interesting, isn't it, when you think about the risk of actually doing something, and I know how successful that cafe is now, and how brilliantly it's been done, and all the extras that go with it, and how fabulous it is to actually go up there and grab a coffee from May's at the Mill Markets. But when we talk about the risk, and okay, so let's think of risk in terms of time and in terms of money. So in Hannah's particular example, she's talking about a low money risk, but a high time risk. But what could have become something quite different from what it became if they hadn't been willing to jump.
Now in 2021, we were still operating the cafe in Melbourne, and an opportunity came up in regional Victoria for a second venue. Now, risky during COVID, crazy, I think. But I think some of us entrepreneurs, you have to have a little bit of crazy. So we weighed up the risk and the investment. We really had to look at the opportunity. There was high foot traffic at this particular venue. The rent was really quite reasonable. And it was a large venue, which gave us confidence, and we really saw the potential for growth. Even during COVID, yes, call us crazy. It was a very hard slog. And upon reflection, we should have invested more in the setup. As you can imagine, it was pretty nerve-wracking. So we didn't put in too much to start, but we grew and grew organically. Over time, we continually improved the fit-outs and the visuals of the cafe to now be what we really, really want. And thankfully, it's paying off. It's a thriving cafe. There really wasn't a great risk initially to start the business, as we weren't locked in. We could just give this a trial and see how we went. Yes, it took so much effort and so much time. You know, we found out about the cafe, and in 3 weeks we actually opened just in time for chill out. So in under 3 weeks we sourced staff, suppliers, negotiated with our landlord, did the setup, we ripped up carpet, we, painted floors, we got furniture, it was just wild. But it was something that we needed to be open to maximise. The Chill Out Festival, which is an epic celebration of the LGBTQTI group. And it was just one of those things that we thought, you know what, let's give ourselves a deadline and let's go for it. We're taking a risk anyway. So we just went for it, opened the cafe. We thought about what would stop us, what's in our way for stopping us. And I look back at how ballsy and brave this was. We went in with a long-term mindset though, and I think that is really important. What could have stopped us short-term was the fact that we had to be open for chill out, that not many people could pull that off. The risk during COVID, knowing that we were part of a retail complex that would have to shut down as we couldn't operate takeaway.
She does talk about, if only we had another year at one point and the impact of COVID, although COVID, the only place you wanted to be if you were from Victoria is in regional Victoria, because in metropolitan Melbourne, we were the most locked down city in the world. So get the hell out of there. But when we're talking about risk, what are we really talking about is the risk to our time and the risk to our money. And taking a calculated risk can be easier than you think. If you go through the worst case scenario, if you really roll through and say, okay, what are the actual risks that we've got to our time, to our money, to our income?
The initial investment, yes, wasn't your average fit-out cost of a cafe, which is somewhere between, $90,000 and $355,000 for the setup. It was small, but it was still big for us. And I suppose this is all relative to your income and financial situation. There was also the risk that we actually didn't have any staff and we weren't from Daylesford, so we didn't know the community. My mum had a stall at the Mill Markets, which is a large venue full of individually owned and operated little individual stalls, and this is actually where our cafe is. So Mum had a stall there, and this is where she found out about the initial opportunity, and she used her network there to try and find people who would help us, even if it was just initial setup. And we ended up getting some of the other stall holders, their children and things like that. So we actually opened with enough staff, which was an amazing achievement within 3 weeks. We advertised as soon as we heard of the opportunity, but yeah, of course we weren't able to do any trial shifts with them. We just put them on the roster and we went for it. So really for us, we knew our time in Melbourne. We were wanting to sell the business in Melbourne. We felt like we had got it to a particular level where we wanted to hand on the caretaker role to someone else. My mum wanted to move to Daylesford, and this then just fell into our lap at a perfect time. Probably a year too early, but you've got to go for it when it does come your way. So, how to fund it? The next thing to consider is your financial investment. Many of us become hesitant and underinvest, which can drastically affect the chances of your growth plan actually working. Or it might take twice as long.
How is this going to work? How are we going to be able to fund through what could potentially be a stormy time where, as Han was saying, they could have had to have closed down completely and not offered takeaway and all those things. So how would we weather those storms? How would we weather the worst case scenario? And are we resilient enough to be able to do that while we're taking this risk? And that can be the risk of putting someone else on. That can be the risk of anything to do with growth or taking on something new. So when you're looking at your own business, what are some of the risks that you could possibly be taking that you haven't taken yet? And what are some of the reasons that you haven't taken those risks?
And hey, time is money. Some of us even over-invest, and this can greatly increase the risk as there's more to lose. However, the gains could also be greater, as your project could be bigger and better and more impactful from the get-go. Back at our Melbourne cafe, during COVID, this was of course a time to, as you say, bunker down and ride about. It was extremely tough, but we acted quickly. We actually moved the cafe from the rear of the premises to the front so that we could operate takeaway safely. This was a cost we had to bear. It wasn't in our plan, but really it forced growth, but one that was necessary, as majority of our customers were coming for the cafe, not the boutique in the end.
You know what I love about this, and this is so very Hannah in the way that she does things, but it's such a great lesson in how to grow your business while taking into account your costs. And I've seen people really, really overinvest in, particularly in setup. All those people that get all the mugs and badged and this and 15,000 on the website and here we go, where a lot of those things can be like almost a DIY effort without looking like a DIY effort. There's a lot of things that you can do to get yourself out there, and then you focus on customer acquisition. Then as you get the customer acquisition, you can start spending more money. So it's sort of invest, grow a little, invest, grow a little, invest, grow a little. And that way you're funding the growth as it goes. And I think that is just golden. If your business is new, how much are you going to put down? How much can you afford to lose? If your business is existing, what is that next step that you can be putting off taking? And what is an actual investment going to bring? One of the things that I really want to touch on here is that sunk cost bias. So when you've already started something and you're moving along in a particular track, putting more money in something that isn't working because you've already invested so much in it is what we call sunk cost bias. So it's absolutely saying to you, we'll just keep going down this path even though this path doesn't seem to be working. You get that thought in your head, if only I put a little bit more money into it, if only I put a little bit more time into it. We keep putting time and money into something that clearly isn't working. If we really take that step back and analyze where we are at and what is the next best move and how much we want to put into it and where is that money coming from. And the other thing that I really like that Hannah does is she keeps track of her capital investments. So they know how much money they've put into it. It's not all willy-nilly. It's an absolute loan to the business as its startup costs and then getting the money back over time. So have a think about those two things and what your business investment is and where you might like to be doing something different, be starting something new, be leveling up, but how you're going to actually afford to pay for that. Consider also debt and how debt can work its way into that.
This podcast is brought to you by Clover Financial, a Melbourne-based mortgage broking business that believes everyone is capable of dreaming big and kicking goals when it comes to money. The Clover team have helped thousands of people move into their first home, buy an investment property, start an investment portfolio, start a business, and even plan for retirement. These guys are relatable, fun, and speak our language. None of this money property jargon that can be totally bamboozling. The team go above and beyond to make it happen and support you all the way. Reach out to cloverfinancial.com.au.
Let's keep going because I'm really interested to see the next thing that Hannah's got to talk about.
I think it was so important to be adaptable and opportunistic during this time. The funding for the Daylesford Cafe was shared between my mum and myself and done in increments. We both invested in the setup costs, of course, and then we put in $5,000 for each growth injection. So it wasn't a big hit to our pockets, it was spaced out. We grew organically and invested for this growth as we went. We kept a record of the capital investment, of course, and we've actually paid ourselves back over time. It meant the initial setup wasn't as scary and we planned ahead. For example, like we had a domestic fridge that had broken shelves and just really wasn't manageable. We knew we needed a big commercial fridge, so we saved, factored in the costs and bought a second-hand commercial fridge. We waited patiently for the right fridge to come along, which actually saved us $3,000. So sometimes you need to factor in and break down the investment and think, do I need to do all of this from the start? Is there enough gain to warrant all of this from the start? Or can I start and earn some profit to then reinvest? Maybe that's sometimes a better way to go.
So the what gets in our own way, and quite often it's our mindset that gets in our own way, but one of the things that really can get in our way is our capacity to fulfill all the tasks in our business that need to be fulfilled. And that's where the staff question becomes really interesting. So if we're going to grow, we're not going to be able to do everything. So we're going to have to think about outsourcing. We're going to have to think about employment. We're going to be taking big risks on people. And I love the way that Han describes taking those big risks, jumping in, not really knowing the environment, the people that she's employed. She's got a really great team there. And I think that speaks volumes on her leadership style. So there are things that we need to know when we're going to grow and we're going to employ people. And one of that is, who are we as a leader, and how are we actually managing those staff, those people? How are we training them? How are we making sure that they're the best possible fit so that we can get out of our own way and we're not being the person that has to be overseeing every single transaction in order to be able to grow.
So throughout my career in hospitality, it has been constant learning and constant growth, and I wouldn't have it any other way. At the moment, we're looking at how we can reduce our costs, with the costs of goods through the roof. These days we have to pay, surcharges for handling, fuel charges, delivery charges, freight. Everyone has a little 2%, 1%, 3% additional. Even with our drinks now, the 10-cent per bottle is actually being passed on as a cost to the retailers. This isn't, we're paying for it. It's all adds up. So really at the moment, we're trying to reduce our costs and we're negotiating with suppliers and distributors. We've also introduced a more cost-effective menu. And to take it a step further, we've actually updated our POS system that forces our front of house to click through to the extras. When they go through, say, smashed avocado, it forces them to say no to an egg, to added bacon, to this and to that. And that way we get add-ons and increased revenue per head. We're also looking at introducing QR codes to our tables so that our customers can order a second coffee or more food without having to even ask staff or get up. These small improvements make such a difference over time. Upgrading to a large coffee and adding relish to a homemade sausage roll seriously adds up. It's small, but it seriously adds up. Our front of house are trained and drilled that they need to earn their wage with the add-ons that they can upsell. So it takes someone, say, 4 minutes to order. That's $2 of their wage. So add relish and cover this cost. Suggest a large coffee or just a small, and often most people will be like, oh nah, let's go a large. We're also introducing a new website and we're targeting bus tour groups. As being within the mill markets, there's ample parking and we have a large venue that can seat, I think it's 75 inside and 35 out. It's quite the destination. So our growth never ends, and I really hope it doesn't end. I love it and I thrive off it. I'm always looking for technical improvements and innovations wherever we go. Creating change is always risky. Write your pros and cons list. Consider who it may potentially affect and what your ideal outcome would look like. Paint this, go into detail. The steps, break down the steps and the costs to get there. Like last week's podcast, we talked about knowing your exit strategy, and it's really important to actually know the real risks and the probability of your plans not working. Is the potential growth worth it? You really need to weigh it up. So be ahead of the game, take the risk and elevate your business. We'd love to hear your journey and your leaps you have taken or need to take. And if you need help working through what's stopping you or weighing up the risk, reach out. We'd love to help.
The second thing I think that she speaks about very articulately is the growth using tech and the QR codes and the ordering systems and all of those sort of things. Again, a big investment, but getting out of our own way because we can only service so many people. Again, it's all about capacity. So what's your actual capacity and where could you make improvements via either employing someone or using better tech? But what is the one thing that you could do to ensure that you are constantly growing, that you're constantly learning, that you're constantly investing in yourself and investing in the business to ensure that the business is keeping on track with the vision for it that you have? Because I think that when we can get our head around what our plans are and then how we're going to fulfill them, and that's a vision that can be shared with our staff, but it's also something that we can use to up-level and train them into better and bigger and more responsibility, and really creates this amazing team as well, which I think is something that Hannah's really got at Maze. So one of those things is going to resonate with you. One of those things is going to be the thing that you want to do. So write it down, get in touch, tell us about it. We would love to hear how you're going on your happy business journey. Now, I just wanted to say this week's giveaway is the Happy Business Journey workbook. If you have not yet downloaded this, it's filled with gold. It is absolutely filled with gold. It is something that you can use just as a big worksheet for what are some of the strategies and things that you want to implement. Remind yourself of Hannah's Big Five, because her Big Five is something that I think would resonate with any business and any business owner. So I hope you enjoyed the format today. It was a bit of a risk, and I know that there's some gold in there that's really going to help you uplift and elevate your business from what it is today to what it can possibly be. You are amazing, and I really hope you enjoy your happy business journey. I will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. My name is Hannah, and I am the producer of this podcast, along with Joshua Dean Graham. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we live and work, and pay our respects to the ancestors and elders, past, present, and emerging. We are grateful and honoured to live on this land and pay homage to the traditions of storytelling, communities, and the connection to land. Thank you for listening to our podcast.
Disclaimer. Just a reminder that the advice that's contained in this podcast is general in nature. It doesn't take into account your individual needs and circumstances, and we recommend considering the appropriateness of any advice to your individual circumstances and needs. We always recommend seeking the advice of an expert before making any financial decisions.